This is Paula Gordon's show, and I am Paula with my breath still taken away by Thomas Frank. Bill Russell is here as well. The state is corruption? What does that mean? That
means the market is this pure free. The market, as I said earlier, is civil society. The market is the natural site of, that's where humans, do their stuff. Whereas government is an imposition. And they've written enormous books of theory on this, that government acts through a form of extortion, that taxation is a form of theft, that whatever government does is essentially a criminal act. And these are the leaders of the conservative movement, by the way, who believe this. And you can find conservative theorists who say, government should not criminalize things like insider trading on Wall Street or price fixing between companies. I even found a conservative theorist that thinks that bribery in certain circumstances, nothing wrong with that. That's business acting in self-defense against the hated, imposing liberal state.
You talk about market, but you're really talking about capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah, business.
And you kind of let capitalism off the hook by talking about market or free market or whatever.
Well, they're entwined in this context.
The thing is, what I've always said, every book that I've written is about capitalism. You don't understand America if you don't understand capitalism. I mean, that's what this country is about. So when I was in graduate school, that's what I studied. I studied advertising or something like that. But it's always been capitalism. That's the system that we live under. And so that is what I mean. But
we're not talking Marxist theory here either. We're talking about the reality that is the American experience.
There's capitalism, and then there was capitalism in the 1960s when I was growing up, and this country had a very equal distribution of wealth. It was a totally different world. The workers by and large were unionized. People had health care. Blue collar people lived next door to white collar people. It was the affluent society. And today, still a capitalist country, but a very different one.
Well, the genius of the Constitution was the balance of power among the three branches, and that balance of power seems to be necessary, extended through the entire community, the entire body politic. If one group, let's call them plutocrats, get control by whatever means, if money is what matters, and they've got all the money, then you get the kinds of radical distortions that we're now seeing.
Yeah.
And it leaves everybody else out. And again, it seems to me that is not sustainable. It never has in history been sustainable.
It's not sustainable because what they're interested in, of course, is immediate gain. Look, this is the nature of capitalism. It always prioritizes immediate gain over long term, and so they wreck down the regulatory state because the regulatory state, OSHA bugs them, labor unions bug them. All these things are cutting down on their profit margin. They want them gone. They get them gone, and then look what happens. They cannibalize themselves. I mean, they revert instantly to 19th century form, as we're seeing before our very eyes.
They also externalize cost, and that's the part that nobody wants to talk about. They leave the corporation, they leave the entity, but they go out into the world at large. Clean air is an obvious example. Polluted foods. I mean, the list.
Externalized costs, like you and I bailing out AIG.
Tremendous debt.
As an example.
Yeah.
Did I mention socializing the debt and
privatizing the profit?
Profit.
We made for the first time in my life, we went to the other Hyde Park this summer, not the one in Chicago, which has an honorable tradition of its own. This was Franklin Delano and Eleanor Roosevelt's home. And it was one of those aha moments when I said, oh yes, we don't have to do it that way. We can do it a different way. And it was very much within the capitalist system, and Franklin Roosevelt was called a traitor to his class because he never left that class. And he kept saying, I saved capitalism from themselves. Why are they being mean to me? There is hope in this rather dire story that you tell, that it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way, but you ready for the really pessimistic side, Paula?
Yeah. Because I can give you the optimistic side.
The last chapter of the book, I told you about the second to last. The last chapter of the book is about the conservatives' quest for permanence. This is a word they use a lot. Permanence. What they have in mind is not just winning an election here and there, not just beating the Democratic Party or something like that, but permanently removing liberal options from the table. So you couldn't bring back a New Deal state, even if you wanted to. And by the way, this has been done successfully in a number of countries, and they've got all sorts of different strategies for doing this, whether it's through trade deals that you can't alter, or whether it's through privatizing Social Security, which, believe me, would be the A-bomb of this whole battle that we're talking about. Once that's gone, the welfare state is literally off the table. But there's any number of ways that they've used to make their vision of the state permanent, and one of them is the outsourcing and privatizing of all this federal work. How are you going to get that back? And another one is deficits. They build up these monster deficits, and you're stuck with it. You're stuck with it for 20 or 30 years. And they've been very successful at dreaming up these schemes. This is where we were talking about the strategy earlier, of dreaming up these schemes, these strategies for making their way permanent and shutting my side down for good. And our team has nobody thinking along those lines.
Permanence only works if you don't believe in evolution.
There you go.
If you catch my drift.
Very good. Hadn't thought of that.
Well, think about it.
Intelligent design. Now, this is intelligent design. It's intelligent misdesign.
My point, exactly.
Exactly.
It's also short-termist in remarkable ways, again, as we're seeing in the markets even as we speak.
Yeah.
This, again, is not sustainable.
And the only constant is change. So
Yeah.
that, I told you I could find a way out of your pessimism. There it is.
All right, Paula.
We are delighted. Thomas Frank. Unlike many journalists, Thomas Frank has sought out the reality behind the rhetoric of a Republican Party now dominated by extremist ideologues. He has closely examined the impact of their policies when they are allowed into positions of political or economic power. We thank him for doing his job and commend his example to others. I'm Paula Gordon. I wish you well.